What's Menace soldiers on the Alliance, and welcome back to another video. Today we're doing Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Before I begin though, I just wanted to say that if you haven't seen my Episode 1 and 2 review, I definitely recommend checking those out. There are some arguments that I bring back up from those videos in this one, so check those out first, then come back to this one. I'll leave links to those in the description below. Also, if you enjoy this review and you'd like to see more, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and let me know your reviews you want to see in the future in the comments below. But with that said, let's jump in. Revenge of the Sith, the Star Wars movie everyone had been waiting for since the prequels were originally announced. On May 19th, 2005, Revenge of the Sith hit theaters and quickly became considered the best out of the Star Wars prequels. I had actually just turned 11 at the time, so it was like perfect timing for me. Still, while it is considered to be the best out of the prequels, it was still considered by many older Star Wars fans as a bad movie compared to the originals, while us younger fans loved it and considered it the best Star Wars movie to date. So that's what we'll be tackling today. Is Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith good? Is it bad? Or is it just meh? Let's check it out. Part 1. The Battle over Coruscant. So the film begins 3 years after Episode 2, as we open up with a gorgeous space battle over Coruscant. Anakin and Obi-Wan had just entered the fight and are en route to save Chancellor Palpatine from General Grievous. They enter the ship and eventually find themselves face to face with Count Dooku. This time, Anakin and Obi-Wan work together to take Dooku out. However, Kenobi is knocked out. Anakin is forced to challenge the Count alone, and due to his experience, power, and dueling ability, he manages to disarm the Count. And when I say he got disarmed, I mean he literally got disarmed. Yeah, because of his hands getting cut off. Alright, I'm just gonna continue on with the review. After Anakin defeats Dooku, Palpatine prods Anakin into decapitating him. While Anakin disagrees at first, he soon follows through with the Chancellor's request. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine attempt to escape the ship, and soon come face to face with General Grievous. Things go awry, and Grievous escapes the ship. Anakin and Obi-Wan then fly half the cruiser onto a runway, and all three survive. And Obi-Wan says,
"Another happy landing."
So I honestly think the opening of this film is arguably the best Star Wars intro out of all the films so far. It does a great job of getting us right into the action while showing us how far the characters have grown since the previous film. While in space, we get a good example to why Anakin is known as one of the best pilots in the Republic, when he effectively saves Obi-Wan just by kinda winging it. Do you get it? Winging it? Because not only did he just wing the situation and happen to figure it out, but he also literally used his wing of the ship. Oh. Alright, I'm gonna be done with these dad jokes. It's also cool to see Obi-Wan and Anakin actually just kind of being buddies and joking around. You can tell they've been through so much stuff in the years between Episode 2 and 3. Bear in mind, at the time, we didn't have the Clone Wars. I mean, we had that little, 2D animated, but we didn't have the full 6 seasons of Clone Wars to kind of fill in this gap, so we had to kind of use our imaginations to do so. The fight with Dooku is also a brief but incredibly important fight as well. In this fight, we see not only how powerful and skilled Anakin has become since Episode 2, but this scene also has a poetic element by having Anakin take on the test by himself after Kenobi is knocked out, showing that Anakin has not only surpassed his master, but also his arch-enemy. I also like the poetic nature of Dooku's death. In the stories of old, decapitation represented the end of one character and the rise of another. In this case, Dooku is effectively passing on the mantle of Sith Lord without Anakin even realizing it. Another important but small scene is when Anakin stops to help Kenobi. Like I said, it's a small scene, but it really shows just how much Anakin cares about Obi-Wan, possibly jeopardizing the entire mission just to carry Kenobi on his back to safety. It shows that not only did he become the hero we knew he would eventually become, but it also adds to his downfall later in the film and just shows just how far he has fallen from this point. So I really like that element. The final confrontation with Grievous is an interesting one too. It's brief, but it gives us a good introduction on the General. I mean, he could definitely be more menacing, but for what we have, I think it's fine. All in all, I really do believe this entire part is really done well. Not only does most of the CGI still hold up, but it does a great job of doing what the first part of a sequel should do. It shows us a passing of time in the characters, making them feel real and making the universe they inhabit feel lived in, and it introduces us into a newer story while also still taking into account what the previous films had. So I can't complain much about this part, and I think it's pretty solid. Part 2. The Vision. After saving the Chancellor, Obi-Wan leaves Anakin with the politicians to go report back to the Jedi Council. Before Skywalker goes on to be the poster boy for the Republic victory, he runs into Padme. They embrace in secret and she tells him that she is pregnant. Skywalker is initially blindsided by the discovery, but he is ultimately overjoyed. Later that night, Anakin has a dream of Padme dying in childbirth. Padme tries to comfort Anakin and tells him it was only a dream, but Anakin knew what happened last time when he had the vision of his mother dying. It wasn't just a dream. It was a premonition he vowed would not come true. Anakin goes to console with Master Yoda about his dreams of death. Yoda tries his best to help, but Anakin disagrees with Yoda's advice and goes to speak to Obi-Wan. However, Kenobi informs Skywalker that Chancellor Palpatine has summoned him. Before Anakin leaves, Kenobi tells him to be mindful of Palpatine. He can feel something is off in the Force. I rather like the conversation with Obi-Wan and Anakin here. It really solidifies the idea that these two warriors are actually really good friends and not just actors. I also really like the scene where Anakin and Padme meet again. However, while I do like this scene, I have to admit, for attempting to keep their love secrets, they really chose a crappy spot to kind of show their affections. I mean, any one of those politicians could just turn around and saw them kissing. Could you imagine like how Mace Windu would act if he just turned around and saw Anakin kissing Padme? He would just walk over and just like slap Anakin and be like, "No! No!" The rest of this part is pretty decent too. I'm aware this part is mostly intended to be the prime example for Anakin's eventual turn to the dark side. And like I just said, I think it does a decent job. I think the way Yoda talks to Anakin is interesting. It almost seems as though Yoda knows that Anakin is in love with Padme, but due to the fact that Skywalker has otherwise grown into a very powerful and successful Jedi, I think he just kind of accepts Anakin's decisions while trying to send him subtle hints that he shouldn't be in love, because Jedi don't do that kind of stuff. So while he wants to respect Skywalker's decisions, he is also the leader of the Jedi, so he has to kind of point Anakin in the right direction. But in the end of the day, Anakin is going to do what he wants, and I think Yoda knows that. Now, of course, that could be purely speculation on my part, but I kind of like that little twist. I also think it adds more of a reason for why Yoda feels as though he failed, for he allowed his compassion for Anakin to cloud his judgment. Otherwise, this part's pretty good, and I don't have any gripes. Part 3. Mind Games. Palpatine elects Anakin to be his personal representative on the Jedi Council. However, while Anakin is gracious for the position, the Jedi Council deny him the rank of Jedi Master. In action, Anakin feels to be outrageous, but he begrudgingly accepts. Kenobi later informs Anakin that the reason the Council accepted Anakin in the first place was not because Palpatine's request, but because they want Anakin to run reconnaissance on the Chancellor, effectively asking Anakin to spy on the Chancellor, breaking the Jedi Code for the good of the Jedi. Later on, Palpatine tells Anakin that he knows the Jedi had sent Anakin to spy on him. He then tells a tale of a Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis the Wise. He explains that Plagueis had the power to save those he loved from dying. So Anakin, intrigued by the possibility of saving Padme, asks Palpatine if it's possible to learn this power and how to wield it. And the Chancellor tells him,
"Is it possible to learn this power?" "Not from a Jedi."
So there's a lot that happens in this part of the film. First of all, we get a brief scene where Palpatine appoints Anakin as his personal representative, which of course excites Anakin. However, later Obi-Wan tells Anakin that they only let him on the council to spy on the Chancellor. I think this was a big mistake by Kenobi. I mean, I get it. Obi-Wan doesn't want to lie to Anakin, but considering how conflicting Skywalker can be sometimes, it may have just been best to keep him out of the loop. I'm sure he would still gain just as much information without being brought into the whole situation. Especially considering later on Palpatine brings up the spying to Anakin anyways. It just seems as though Kenobi could have thought it out better. Now, speaking of Palpatine, I was always a big fan of this theater scene. I always liked how Palpatine was practically telling Anakin that he was Plagueis' apprentice without actually saying it. Plus, Ian McDiarmid is just such a great Palpatine. He's so deliciously evil. I love it. So for this part as a whole, it really does a good job of presenting the manipulation from both the Jedi and Palpatine. I know a lot of people have complained about Anakin coming off almost stupid, but upon rewatching, I have come to really empathize with Anakin. It's clear that while he's become more confident in his abilities, he's still an emotional, broken person. So when the Jedi Council, including Obi-Wan, tell him to break the rules that he's been forced to follow since he was a kid, it makes them look like hypocrites, and I can understand why Anakin would start to doubt them. Part 4. General Grievous. The Jedi Council receive word that General Grievous is hiding on the planet of Utapau and Kenobi is sent to capture him. Before he sets off, Obi-Wan and Anakin have one final chat. brother to brother. Kenobi tells Skywalker that he's proud of the Jedi he has become, then sets off for Utapau. Obi-Wan eventually makes it to Utapau and confronts General Grievous. After a brief lightsaber duel, their fight takes them to a ship platform. While Grievous is physically superior due to his droid body, Kenobi's cunning and quick thinking allow him to pull off the victory and destroy the general. All in all, I think this part of the film is a solid B story. And what I mean by B story is that Anakin's story and manipulation is the main story in this film, or I should call it the A story, while Kenobi's story is the B, or the secondary point story. But just because it's the B plot doesn't make it unneeded. In fact, this B plot has two very important factors to really add to the story to make it all cohesive. The first important reason, we need to give Kenobi a reason to be far away from Anakin back on Coruscant. I personally believe Palpatine chose Anakin to face Grievous first because he knew the Council was going to disagree and send someone with a greater defense ability, which is Kenobi. So I like that element. It really adds to just how conniving and calculating Palpatine really is. The second important reason of this B story is, well, General Grievous isn't in episode 4, so he kinda has to die. Those are the two important reasons. Now, while those are the main reasons for why it exists, I don't think this part feels forced. It does a good job of showcasing Kenobi's defensive saber skill against Grievous while giving us a pretty unorthodox duel. This fight also gives more proof to why Kenobi manages to keep up so well with Anakin at the end of the film, and I like that. I will say though, for Kenobi being regarded as just as wise as Yoda, he relies on luck a lot. A good example of this is when he dove through the window after the probe in episode 2. He could have very easily missed the probe or lost his grip and fell to his death, and that would have been the end of Kenobi. But when he jumps down, surrounded by a ton of droids, he knew that Grievous would challenge him without help. But what if he didn't? Kenobi would have been, as Jar Jar put it, in deep doo-doo now. I believe Hishi, or Hishi, did it the best.
I will deal with this Jedi slime myself.
Your move.
I'm just kidding. Everyone shoot this fool.
All in all though, I think this scene does a good job of accomplishing what it sets out to do. Kill Grievous and give Kenobi a good reason for being away from Anakin. Plus, in the beginning of this scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin are both looking at each other and Obi-Wan's in the light, Anakin's in the dark, I think that's really good symbolism and I like that imagery. It's always stuck with me, so little thing, but I think it's cool. Okay, let's continue. What do you mean? I didn't change my clothes. You changed your clothes. Just kidding, I'm actually filming this in between my daughter's naps. So I recorded that earlier in the day. Now I'm back to record this part. So there you go. Part 5, Order 66. Anakin goes to inform Palpatine on Obi-Wan's mission. Palpatine uses the situation to attempt to lure Anakin to the dark side. Skywalker soon discovers that Palpatine is in fact the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Palpatine confirms the accusation, but informs Anakin that only through him can Anakin learn the way to save Padme. So if Anakin kills Palpatine, he effectively can't save Padme, and therefore Padme dies too. So instead, Anakin chooses to inform the Jedi Council to organize for Palpatine's arrest. And in doing so, Palpatine will survive in prison, and so Anakin can still learn the knowledge he possesses. Anakin informs Mace Windu of his discovery. Windu tells Skywalker to wait for them to get back. Initially, Anakin waits in the Jedi Council chambers as he is told to do, but after realizing that Mace and the other Jedi may kill Palpatine instead of just capturing him, he decides to go and make sure Palpatine survives. Windu and the other Jedi attempt to arrest the Chancellor, but Palpatine fights back, killing all the Jedi except for Mace Windu. After a brief skirmish, Windu manages to defeat Palpatine and holds him at sword point. Anakin enters the room and both Palpatine and Windu begin to mess with his mind. And so Anakin, conflicted by both mentors, tries to stop Windu from killing Palpatine. For although Palpatine is evil, he holds the key to saving Padme. Skywalker, in a last-ditch effort, cuts off Mace Windu's hand. Palpatine then uses Force Lightning to shock the Jedi Master and throw Mace out the window. Ha! Get it? Mace Windu got maced out the window? I'm probably the first YouTuber to make that joke. Okay, let me have that, alright? It was the last dad joke. Won't happen again. I'm sorry. After betraying Windu, Anakin realizes there is no going back. If he is to save Padme from dying, he would have to do whatever Sidious asked of him. Whatever it takes. Palpatine then convinces Anakin that the Jedi Council will come and kill them both for what they did. Anakin is then dubbed Darth Vader and leads an assault on the Jedi Academy. destroying the Jedi before the Jedi can destroy them. Darth Sidious executes Order 66, which triggers an inhibitor chip in the brains of all the clones, and the chip causes them to turn on their Jedi leaders. Throughout the galaxy, hundreds of Jedi are killed without warning, betrayed by the very clones they called allies. Most of them shot in the back. So this is probably the most important and the most scrutinized scene out of the entire Star Wars franchise. This is where Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. Before, when I watched this scene where Palpatine admits to being Darth Sidious, I always wondered why Anakin didn't just kill the old Sith. But now I can understand why. Anakin wants to kill Palpatine, but he can't, for then Anakin won't be able to save Padme from dying. The scene where Anakin is waiting in the council chambers while Padme is at home and they're both just kind of staring out into the Coruscant sky, kind of like looking at each other but not really actually looking at each other. I think that's a really good scene. I think this scene is one of those like special little gem scenes that are like sprinkled throughout all the movies. And I like it because it's very simple and it's very small, but it leaves a lasting impact on you. So I think that's good. I like the fight with Palpatine and Mace. I think it does a good job of showing both characters' incredibly powerful lightsaber skills. I still, till this day, do not know who exactly won the fight. For while Samuel L. Jackson has said that George Lucas told him that he won the fight, the novel about the movie would actually point towards Palpatine actually throwing the fight, so I don't know. I guess it's up to interpretation. For me, I always saw it as somewhere in the middle. Let me explain. I always believed that while Palpatine was initially planning to kill Mace, when he sensed Anakin's arrival, he decided to stall the fight a bit. But in doing so, he accidentally let Windu overpower him. I mean, look at his face right here. That is not the face of someone not struggling. And so Palpatine threw the fight not necessarily because he wanted to, but because he was losing anyway and Anakin was just about to walk in. So while Mace technically won the fight, Palpatine knew Mace would lose his life. So Palpatine ultimately wins either way you look at it. So it doesn't really matter. Oh, and on a side note, and this is like a little weird thing, and it might just be me, but the scene where Mace is about to kill Palpatine and Anakin is standing there contemplating what to do, while I know what does happen, I always have this feeling that something else might happen. Like Anakin will actually let Mace kill Palpatine. And like I said, that could be just me, but that's just what happens to me sometimes. Maybe it's just my brain, but I think that's interesting that the story can actually make me think that way, even though I know what's going to happen. So that's interesting to me. Anyway, for many Star Wars fans, Anakin being manipulated into joining the dark side makes sense, but some believe this turn was way too quick, for how can you go from being a hero to murdering children in a matter of minutes? But I think people don't fully realize how the dark side works in Star Wars. You don't just decide to be bad one day, the darkness consumes your mind. It's like a plague of sorts. Anakin saved Palpatine because he wanted to save Padme, but in doing so, he plunged his soul towards the dark side. And we later see just how twisted Anakin's brain had become by the time he's on Mustafar. Anakin has become so consumed with the dark side, he chokes Padme. And there's a point when he lets her go, it almost looks like he didn't really realize what he was doing. Like, the good side of Anakin was actually trying to stop him mentally, and I just think that's an interesting concept. So while I'll admit, the dark side Anakin should have been covered more in the film, considering all the different plot lines and events that happen in the movie, I think it does a decent job. But it's not that Anakin's sudden turn to the dark side needs more explanation. I think what needs more explanation is the dark side itself and a little more just story on why it is the way it is. But maybe that's just my opinion. And now we get to the saddest scene in all of Star Wars, Order 66. I think overall, this scene is just really well done. Say what you want about George Lucas as a director, but this is one of those cases that shows his brilliance. A somber score plays in the background as we watch our heroes die one by one. I think what's incredibly powerful about this scene is that for the people who aren't Star Wars fans, they don't really know who these characters are, but you feel for them immensely. And there's a part of me that just wants to yell at the screen and try to warn them about what's coming. Obi-Wan, watch out! Obi-Wan! Obi-Wan, no! No, Obi-Wan! Obi-Wan! Watch behind you! Coyote-Mundi! Behind you, Coyote-Mundi! They're gonna get him! Oh no! No! Look at him! Nugget, look at the... Ow, ow. Oh! Are you okay? I'm sorry. For anyone curious, she's okay. She's okay. Yeah, she's a good kitty. Anyways, back to the review. Like I stated before, Part 5 is incredibly important and very well done. And while I understand the gripes, I think for the most part, all of Part 5 is really good. Part 6, The Discovery. While the majority of Jedi had been slain, both Master Kenobi and Yoda managed to escape with their lives. They both meet with Bail Organa on a ship and discuss a counterattack. They realize there is no fighting back, but they can at least return to the Jedi Temple and deactivate a fake distress call meant to lure in other Jedi to be killed at the temple. Back with Anakin, after sacking the Jedi Temple, he flies to Mustafar and slaughters the remaining Separatist leaders, putting an end to the droid army once and for all. At the Senate building, Palpatine shows his scars as proof towards a Jedi attempting to kill him, making the Jedi illegal. He then commands that the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire, effectively locking himself in as the Emperor of the Galaxy. Soon after, Obi-Wan and Yoda manage to disarm the Jedi trap, but they soon discover that it was Anakin who led the attack on the temple. It becomes clear to the Masters that the only way to save the galaxy is to remove both Anakin and Palpatine from the equation. And so, Kenobi, scared for his brother, knows what must be done. Obi-Wan goes to Padme to inform her that Anakin has turned to the dark side. She doesn't want to believe him, but heads off to Mustafar to find her husband. And Kenobi, knowing she is going to seek out Anakin, sneaks aboard her ship. There's only a few things to talk about in this part of the film. So firstly, the scene where Obi-Wan and Yoda storm the fallen temple is one of those scenes where I wish there was just more of. I mean, sure, from a story point of view, this scene served its purpose, but I would really have liked to just see Kenobi and Yoda just traveling around reminiscing about things as they go through the temple. Once again, maybe that's just my opinion, but I would just like to see that. Now, with that said, if you ask me, the film's biggest plot hole is that security system. It manages to tap into the security recording that shows Palpatine being a Sith. At this point, Kenobi and Yoda should have used that as proof. Instead of going and fighting Palpatine and Anakin, they could have just used that security footage to show that to the entire Republic, and people would be like, oh, this Emperor we just named as Emperor is kind of a bad guy. Let's go arrest him. Or maybe let's all just jump him at once. Can't kill us all. We can kill him maybe, and that would just solve the issue right there. But I get it, there is an episode 4, 5, and 6, so we kind of have to let that happen. But besides that somewhat major plot hole, this part of the film is done pretty well. Part 7, The Clash of Brothers. Padme arrives on Mustafar and attempts to quell her husband. While it seems to work at first, the mood soon changes when Padme realizes Anakin had descent into such a dark place he was barely even recognizable anymore. Physically speaking, he looked the same, but deep down, this was no longer Anakin Skywalker. This was Darth Vader. Obi-Wan soon reveals himself, which leads Anakin into believing Padme brought Kenobi to Mustafar to kill him. This triggers Anakin and he begins to force choke Padme. After a few moments, he released her and believed Kenobi manipulated Padme into turning against him. It soon becomes clear to Kenobi that Anakin will not be brought back. It was true, Anakin Skywalker had officially been killed by Darth Vader, and both warriors began to battle throughout the factory. Back on Coruscant, Yoda and Darth Sidious face off in an epic duel. However, while Yoda holds his own, Palpatine manages to catch the Jedi Master off balance, effectively winning the battle. Back on Mustafar, Kenobi and Vader's epic duel leads them throughout the entire factory, eventually leading them closer to the river of lava below. Kenobi, tired and fatigued, withdraws from the fight and pleads with Anakin to stop this madness. Anakin, taken by his anger and overconfidence, charges forth anyway. And so, Obi-Wan, using the last of his strength, delivers 2 decisive slashes severing Anakin's arm and legs. Anakin rolls down the hill and catches on fire due to the river of lava. Obi-Wan looked on in horror as his old ally was consumed by flame. Obi-Wan picked up Anakin's lightsaber and left Vader along the river, believing him good as dead. Masters Kenobi and Yoda soon reconvene while the Emperor discovers Vader is still alive. Padme managed to live long enough to bear 2 children, a son named Luke and a daughter named Leia. Bail Organa adopts Leia for himself, while Kenobi takes Luke back to his Uncle Owen in Amperu on Tatooine. He then vows to remain in exile on Tatooine and watch over Luke. Darth Vader is given a suit and a respirator that allows him to live, and he takes his rightful spot next to the Emperor, Darth Sidious. All hail the Galactic Empire, and that is the end. So right off the bat, let's talk about Anakin and Obi-Wan's fight. I've heard a few other YouTubers in the past complain about how this fight is just too flashy and over choreographed, but I never really understood that argument. I mean, I'll admit, the whole Tarzan scene, that might be a little much. But the rest of the scene I'm completely okay with. This is freaking Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi in their prime. Of course they're going to look perfect in their dueling skills. A fact we've seen them both prove already. Anakin is one of the strongest offensive duelists, as we saw when he defeated Count Dooku, and Kenobi is one of the strongest defensive duelists, as we saw when he defeated General Grievous. Why wouldn't their fight appear to be like a poetic dance with blades? It should look near perfect, because they are near perfect in their fighting styles. But, you know, maybe that's just my opinion. Now for Yoda and Palpatine's fight, while it's ultimately unneeded in terms of story, and it's pretty much just there for fan service, I think it's awesome. And like I said earlier, Palpatine is just so deliciously evil, and he loves it, and it's just so good. Another plot point people dislike is that Padme dies of a broken heart. And I'm not gonna lie, this meme, it's really, really good. But I always saw the died of a broken heart as an oversimplification for her death. I think it's since been confirmed while Anakin wounded her, Palpatine used the Force to actually stop her heart or something like that. And that is ultimately why the medical bots couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, because they can't detect the Force. And this theory is backed by the fact Palpatine tells Vader Padme died before he should have even known. But I'll admit, it's a very subtle hint, so I'm not surprised it went over everyone's heads. But overall, I feel this final part of the film was done really well, and it was a great finale to a really fun movie. And now we come to the conclusion of the video. In my opinion, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is a good movie. I dislike when people say the prequels are trash. I mean, I can understand fans' quarrels with the prequel trilogy, and while an argument could be made that Episode 1 and 2 are bad films, I don't think it's fair to put this film down with the other two. From start to finish, this movie is constantly propelling the story forward. It contains some of the best action and drama out of the entire franchise. So you can say what you want about Episode 3, for while from a film quality standpoint, it's not as good as the originals, it is, in my opinion, the best Star Wars movie to date. And that is my review for Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please consider liking, subscribing, and turn notifications. I do a video every single week. I try to do 2, but I end up doing at least 1. So, you know, I'm always having fun content. So if you like my stuff, subscribe and turn on notifications, all that good stuff. And I'll keep making videos. But thanks again for watching, you guys. If you want to check out my Discord, I'll leave that in the description below. You guys can come chat with me. We'll talk about some Star Wars. So I'll meet you guys down there, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.